No, I should have known that. Who is the original?
I think her name, I want to say Shirley Murdoch was, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, she is unsung.
But after she released that song, like she became known in the music industry to be like this, pretty much like they labeled her like a husband stealer, like a homewrecker.
Wow.
And like after that, like yeah,
her career was pretty much over.
It wasn't. I wouldn't say it was over, but you know, it's that whole dynamic of where, you know, we as Black people and colonized people, we of course we love soul music or whatever, but
and we think about what really happens in life.
Yeah, and you know, just the fact that we aren't able to support the artists that we really enjoy, like, you know, like Shirley Murdoch and, you know, things of that nature. And so, like, they kind of get, how do you say, like, not necessarily swept under the rug, but they don't receive the limelight.
They don't get the credit that they really deserve.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow.
But anyway, good morning, Trappers. Welcome to the Revolutionary Book Trap with your boy, Chiefs Dia.
And Chiefs Nyah.
Yes. It is another Sunday, January 19th. Tomorrow is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And so, yeah, what's up? Y'all doing okay? So, first things first. The homeless food drive that we did yesterday was a success. Success. You know, I be country, but so y'all, we had a long ass day, and to be completely honest, like, child, I was so exhausted. Like, our day started at 6 a.m. So we're going to give y'all the rundown. But before we even go into that, we really want to express our sincere gratitude and appreciation to each and every single one of you who donated, who shared the links, who spoke to your family and friend members about the homeless food drive to get them to show support. Yeah, we thank you. And you can expect more in the future. But so we woke up at like 6 a.m. We came over to my place, and we switched the menu, which we spoke about briefly in our last episode, but we made baked chicken, we had rice, string beans, and rolls. Me and comrade Kimya, why am I about to call you Kimya? Me and comrade Nyah was on the baked chicken. So we baked all of the chicken. Shout out to Comrade Angelica, who prepared the string beans, and to Comrade Terry, who prepared the rice. So we came over to my place about 6 a.m. We heated the food. Then we packaged it all. We put it in the bags, which had granola bars, water, a Black Hammer Rocheur, and a granola bar. And then we loaded Comrade Nyah's truck. Then we headed out to Central Park where we met, you know, all of the other comrades. And I want to give a shout out to Comrade Angelica because she was having car trouble. And so it was pretty much a situation to where, like, she was telling us her key got stuck in the ignition and that the car, if she crunk it, like if she turned it on, she wouldn't be able to turn it off. So at the last minute, we had to go and we had to pick her up from this gas station she was situated at. But we got her car home and she was able to join us. So we headed down to Woodruff Park, which is smack dab directly in the middle of downtown Atlanta. And you know, you're blatantly exposed to the poverty and homelessness our people, you know, Black and colonized people face, right? And it's a glaring contradiction because you see all of this new propaganda going out about Atlanta and how it's this budding new metropolitan, you know, that I think they even started some campaign this year about trying to get young entrepreneurs,
like that.
mainly focusing on white college graduates or whatever, to move here into the city. But you come here to Atlanta, and not just in Hurt Park, but under the highway bypasses, like the bridges on the corners. Tent cities everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. But you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't see that on how they, promote and show off Atlanta. And it's just crazy. And you know what I was thinking about, Comrade? Because right now, the emergency room in Grady Hospital, and from my understanding, like Grady Hospital, is the black hospital. It is the hospital for colonized and African people. And like last year, like the end of last year in almost October, I want to say like maybe in December sometime, I believe 9 floors of this hospital was flooded out by over like maybe 30 gallons of water. They had to close the emergency room in Grady Hospital. And do you know that the emergency rooms in Grady Hospital won't be open again this year until October? October of this year. And I'm saying that to say, you see billboards with black and colonized people professing like some love for Grady Hospital. But you have the money and the resources to be putting up all of these, what do you call the things? Advertisements.
Billboards.
The billboards, yeah. You have all of the resources to create these. I'm talking about like the billboards, like there's no way you cannot see these big ass billboards. And then on top of that, y'all have commercials with, again, black and colonized people saying how much they love Grady Hospital. But right now, you can't even meet the needs of the people all the way up until October. So tell me, how are the resources that, that are circulating in this hospital being allocated for these advertisements, but you don't have resources to fix your antiquated piping system within this, in a hospital, you don't have the resources to address that? And now black and colonized people have to struggle to go to healthcare.
Basic healthcare, yeah. Because Grady, is known for serving that community, serving the black and colonized community, because so many don't have insurance of any kind. And so they can literally walk into Grady to get medications and things that they won't be able to get anywhere else. And so because that is the population that's served, of course, it's not going to be a priority to fix that, because they want to turn this into a lucrative area for white and I'll even say black capitalist people that can make the city money.
Exactly. And I mean, it's just these glaring contradictions that we see here in the city, but at the same time, black people, colonized people are being gentrified out of their communities, out of the communities, and, this rampant homelessness and poverty. And, that's what, this was our second homeless food drive. And I mean, this is what we're facing, not only in the black communities here in Atlanta, but any major metropolitan where you have a high concentration of black and colonized people. It's the same conditions. It is the same conditions. But yeah, getting back to the food drive, we were able to give out, we fed 100 people. And yeah, shout out to all of our volunteers who came out. We had Jason, this brother traveled from Athens, Georgia. We had Comrade Naya's cousin,
Monica,
who came as well too. We had my co-workers Dana and Naya, who came out, and then also my significant other, my partner Donnell, was there too. But we had a great time though. So we went down, we started off in Woodruff Park, and there it was some homeless brothers and sisters there that we were able to give out meals. But when we got to Hurt Park, all we did was open Comrade Naya's trunk, and then and within 10 minutes, all of the meals were gone. But it's just evident to this persistent need to meet the immediate needs of our people. To do what we can, and as we build toward, liberation of from this capitalist, imperialist society system. So,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was fulfilling though, but it was just leaving there. You still don't have a feeling that you know that there's still a lot more work to be done, and that there were so many more people that who needed food and basic things and basic necessities. And again, what's happening to them is coming from the same source of what's happening to Black and colonized people all over the country and all over the world.
And you know what? Like, I was, just thinking of, because during this process, we approached a Trader Joe's here within the city in order to get donations, for the food drive, and pretty much the response was that we would have to. It was like a 2-week process that we had to fill out an application, and that we had to 501c3, and we had to prove that to them. And I'm saying that because even like capitalism, imperialism has found a way to make getting donations lucrative to them, to again fill their coffers, to say. And just the fact that I was talking to my comrade Terry yesterday, and he was talking about, like, he knows of entities that receive like surplus donations. So a surplus donation would be like pretty much in the terms, like, say if like Popeyes, for example, had like a surplus of chicken sandwiches, they could just freely give that away to this nonprofit entity, and then just write it off on like their taxes or something like that. But just to even show you how capitalism has like skewed it, and so it makes you believe that these corporations and they don't, because if it doesn't benefit them, they would actually literally throw the food away before they give it to a hungry person. And you will get, like, if you've worked in fast food, I've worked in fast food.
The waste, I have too.
Yeah,
so and if you know the amount of food that goes to waste literally every single day. And
let me tell y'all, like, working in McDonald's when I was in high school, shit, they had like this little bin, like, of food. Like, if it was messed up or somebody didn't want it, they put it in like this bin to again
and
throw
they count
away.
It at the end of the day.
Yeah,
because I had to do that too.
But you know what I did? I used to take them burgers, stick it in my shirt, and then go into the restroom and just pig the fuck out. Like, but and then you would get fired, like, if you were caught taking
stealing trash, stuff that they're gonna throw away anyway. Like, literally, they would.
Yeah. But this is what colonialism is. This is what imperialism is. This is what capitalism is, and this is what we as Black Hammer is fighting each and every single day. So sign up, become a member, support. Go to blackhammer.org. Become a monthly sustaining member. Donate on a monthly basis. You can just you can donate at through the Cash App. $Black Hammer, or just support. And
the links are in the comments section. Yes. And if you haven't already shared the video, make sure you share. We do have 2 other drives that are coming up. One's happening today. It's in Wilmington, Delaware. It's going to be on Park and Jackson Drive, at the corner of Park and Jackson Drive at 1 p.m. So if you're in that area, go see them, help give. And I think they have a Cash App, which I did not list here. But then also the Orlando Clothes and Hygiene Drive is happening on the 25th, 12520 at 1 p.m. and it's going to be at Pine Hills, Orlando. So you can also still give to that at CashApp BH Florida. CashApp BH Florida. So you can still give to that. If you're in the area, they would love to have your help in giving out, but we got to serve our community. So, again, as my comrade said, that's what Black Hammer is about. And we're going to continue to do this until we win the war against imperialism.
Y'all see our sets just get better and better. Like,
we keep changing it up.
We all in the sunlight and all of that good stuff. But Black Power to all of our trappers that have come on. We about to go ahead and get started. Please share like Comrade Knight said, and put hashtag shared in the comments when you shared it. Okay, comrades. So today we're continuing with chapter 4. And so today, we've come to the part in the chapter where Comrade Walter Rodney is speaking about continuing politico-military developments in Africa from 1500 to 1885. So, just in terms of the timeline, let me back up. So from here, what Comrade Walter Rodney is going to be speaking about is like the political and the military developments of these African societies. He's going to speak about, speak to different African societies during this period of time, but how they were able to politically and militarily develop in spite of the current slave trade that was happening in Africa from this, in this point in time. And this is from 1500 to 1885. So, just even in that aspect, to understand that for the slave trade to have happened over this long ass period of time from 1500 to 1885, that is a long ass time.
Yeah. And just the magnitude in which, and we already discussed like the fact that the stagnation of the growth of the entire continent, even if it wasn't totally in every part of the continent, it was evident in that every other continent was growing. Yeah. And I just think that's so important to remember, is how much it impacted the overall growth of the population. Yeah.
So he pretty much he breaks it into two. He places these African societies in like two categories. Is in one with the African societies being directly caught up in European generated activities, and those who continued in the appearances of a traditional manner. So he goes on to say the development did continue in certain areas, such as South Central Africa, where pretty much he says that these African populations were free to pursue, a path of development with interplay between the people, the population of people there, and the environment. And then he pretty much, as he provides these examples, we're going to be looking at their achievements, what they were able to achieve even under the bombardment of slavery. And he speaks about African armies being in existence pre-colonial. And he was saying that, he says that they had like all of the political implications of any other, developing society, pre-colonial. And so he says from 1500 again to 1885, it meant that African social collectives became more capable of defending the interests of their people and to, opposed to the interests of those who were outside of their people. So pretty much meaning that these African societies who were able to continue to develop had time to focus on their interests, such as looking into production, religion, spirituality, getting a better understanding of their economy and things of that nature. Black Power, Comrade Tariva. And so,
and even just their military interests as well, strengthening their militaries and getting what they needed, horses, weapons, and things of that sort.
And then it's also important to comment that this, it was happening on a smaller scale. Like you only saw the benefits, of, these African people, of the people and the populations of these certain African societies there were very few and far in between, and you would only see the benefits of of this interplay between the environment and the population in small African communities. And it's just, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to also say, he also brings up again here the role that religion played in like developing and forming the state in like the class system. Yeah. So even while that was happening under like the development of, the economics and then the military, the religious, like Islam and Christianity, served to really build the state in different African societies and things like that, which I guess brought it to like the feudal point that it was going to.
And just to give you all a better example, I feel like I kind of like jumbled that up, but hold on, let me find the portion where he speaks to it really quick. Okay, so he says politico-military development in Africa from 1500 to 1885 meant that African social collectives have become more capable of defending the interests of their members as opposed to the interests of people outside the given community. It also meant that the individual in a politically mature and militarily strong state would be free from external threat of physical removal. He would have more opportunities to apply his own skill in fields as diversified as minstrelsy, and bronze working under the protection of the state. He could also use his creativity and inventiveness to refine the religion of his people, or to work out a more manageable constitution, or to contribute to new techniques of war, or to advance agriculture and trade. Of course, it is also true that the benefits of all such contributions went mainly to a small section of African society, both within and without the zone of slaving. For as communalism receded, the principle of egalitarian distribution was disregarded. These various points can be illustrated by concrete historical examples drawn from all over the continent during the pre-colonial period in question. So yeah, that's just, speaking to what I guess I was trying to explain earlier, but we get the picture. So the first African society that he speaks about is Yoruba. And a lot of us are, familiar with Yoruba through, the spirituality, the traditional spiritual system, the Ife, which speaks to the Orishas. Like you hear of Shango, you hear of Oshun, you hear of Oye, and for a lot of us, in this current age, that has been the most prominent and the most complete picture of a traditional African spiritual system. And me and Comrade Nyah was speaking about it earlier, and you said that Ifa is one of the longest, like the oldest religious systems in existence, like today. And so, So, okay, he speaks about the state of Oye and of Benin and the preservation of ivory, their works in terracotta and bronze sculptures. And terracotta, we was looking it up earlier, is like a
clay pottery and things like that.
So he says that even though Yoruba was in it was in an intensive area of slaving, but he says that the kingdom was the kingdom of Oye, which was a state in Yoruba land, kept fairly clear of involvement with slave trading in the late 18th century. And until the late 18th century. And he said that up until that point, the population mainly concentrated on local production, trade, consolidation, and expansion of trade. And so before, the coming of, even like in this period of time, this African society was still able to have that, to continue its development in those aspects. So he says that the kingdom was ruled over by a Alafin, and that's pretty much comparable.
Type of ruler.
Yeah, a type of ruler.
That society.
Mm-hmm. And they had
aristocracy.
Aristocracy. Yeah, and so he even comments from like the 16th to the 18th century constitutional mechanisms between the Alafin and the subjects pretty much crystallized. So meaning that at this period in time, they still had a working constitution, which, pretty much, begs to say that they pretty much had laws, they had protocols, and all of these different things happening, developing even as the slave trade was happening, in the continent. And he says that they traded more in cloth than they did in slaves, and they were connected to the Western Sudanic trading zones. And we were able to speak about, just how expansive, the trading network was in Africa, like in previous chapters. But, that's just also proving to like the development of these societies. And he says that they were able to trade in like horses, so they got horses, which made their armies more feared and respected. And he makes the comment that, let me find it, pretty much that Yorubaland and the Oye were an example of African development on the basis of, forces which they didn't consciously manipulate, but they were able to utilize, these forces, and they had utilization of political techniques. And I just wanted to comment on this portion real quick. And it says, the Yoruba of Oyo concentrated on relations with the hinterland, thereby connecting with the Western Sudanic trading zone. It was from the north that Oye got the horses, which made his armies feared and respected. Oye is a prime example of that African development, which had its root deep in the past, in the contradictions between man and environment. Its people continue to develop on the basis of forces which they did not consciously manipulate, as well as through the deliberate utilization of political techniques. Yes. Let's see.
And then then from there we go into the fact that in the early 19th century, that's when they began to export slave captives in significant amounts. And then the reasons why, it says they were obtained partly by military campaigns outside Yorubaland, but also local slave procuring. Local slave procuring involved kidnapping, armed raids, uncertainty, and disunity, which means that they were at war. Like, it was basically civil war that was breaking out. Those features, together with internal constitutional tensions and an external threat from the Islamic North, brought about the downfall of the Oyo Empire by about 1830. The famous Yoruba ancestral home was Ife, which was also despoiled, and its citizens turned into refugees because of quarrels among the Yoruba over kidnapping, sale into slavery. So when the slave trade actually did, penetrate or percolate into that society, it basically destroyed it.
Exactly.
The spirituality and things like that pretty much went out the window, and then here comes the effects of colonialism. And I just think that that's just, again, like we had said it before, but basically these things are kind of re-exemplified every time we read this.
Exactly. And then, so after that, he goes into how, like, they were able to rebuild up into a point, and he says, but it was also testimony to the level of first, before I get into that, I don't want to, just what you just laid out cannot be understated, because like we see like so we're discussing Yorubaland and the Dahomey, which is the next African society, which we'll discuss in this episode. But what is so glaring is that when, you know, these African societies did give into the slave trade, it led to their downfall. It was, you know, and I just, that was very just profound and powerful.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so after, in the early 19th century, he says that they were able to rebuild. They had, Yeah. So they would be able to, they rebuild New Oye,
Abadan. I said Audubon, but it's Abadan.
Abadan, Ajeye, Abeokuta, and Ijebu. I think. Yeah. But and that also speaks to, like, at this point in time in these African societies that we are reading about right now, like the military and like the political apparatus were very closely tied together. And for example, it says that, and I'll read this portion. It says, in the Oyo Empire, the silver power was dominant, and the military generals were servants of the king. Subsequently, however, the military took over effective political power. For instance, the Ajayi state was founded by Kurumi, said to have been the greatest Yoruba general of those troubled times, and this is following the fall of Oyo. Kurumi established a personal military ascendancy in Ajayi. Abadan was slightly different in that there is a group of military officers who collectively form the political elite. Efforts to put civilians back in power were half-hearted and unsuccessful. After all, the town itself grew out of a military encampment. So, I mean, that is just, you know, testament to how influential the military was in this African society.
Yeah, and then just in most societies, that's who is acquiring the power, and like the class system that was developing. I mean, just like in and of itself, before they even came into contact with the Europeans and the enslavement, you know, their communities, their civilizations were developing into a state that was comparable to feudalism, in which, you know, people were going to do work in, you know, return for survival and access to the land and being able to develop the land, you know, if they provided like the military labor, which he goes into later here. But yeah,
and he also speaks briefly about you know, he just makes mention of how Yoruba, they acquired European firearms in large numbers and were able to integrate them in into trading, he says, politics and military strategy. And he goes on to say that Ibadan, which was once the greatest military in power in Yoruba land, selling captives as well as retaining many for use as laborers for its own benefit. But Abadan's farming areas were hit by war, and the Abadan's rulers also started removing prisoners, farming the land, and selling them instead to the Europeans. And
I wanted to even back up a little bit because it's relevant to what you said. When they were trying to get these firearms, what did they have to give in return? Human captives, and that was the only thing that they would accept for that. And up here where it talks about even where they were trying to get better firearms or better weapons technology, the Europeans was like, no, we're not going to do that.
We're not going to give y'all that.
It says one item of European technology that was anxiously sought by Africans and that was fairly easily obtainable from Europeans was the firearm. From the 1820s onward, the Yoruba acquired European firearms in large numbers and integrated them into the pattern of trade, politics, and military strategy. On the eve of colonial rule, Yoruba generals were reaching out for breech-loading rifles and even rockets, and Europe stepped in too quickly for that move to get far. And they
so
were
they
just
was like,
nah.
hold up, niggas.
Yeah, y'all getting a little too brave, and we need to keep y'all in this exploitive position so we can continue to get these captives. So we'll give you some little guns, but you're not fixing to get these guns over here. And then, you know, just the vulnerability that they were put in, what you were talking about, like with the farming areas, and they were hit by war. And again, the only way that they can get the things that they need to develop their land and to protect their land from external threats was the selling of slaves. Right. So it's like they were forced into doing it. And I just think that that's, something for us to really pay attention to, because it's not just they just did it. It was the conditions of the land and the really their position in the trade and everything that forced them to do it. Yeah.
And so, he also speaks about, how historically, when you look at the history of Yoruba in the Yoruba states, that it has pretty much been stated that, these, the states were unable to, unite and stuff like that and to combine as people. And to disprove that, he says, too often historians lay undue emphasis on the failure of 19th century Yoruba states to unite and produce an entity as large as the former empire of OU. But firstly, the size of a political unit is not the most important criterion for evaluating the achievements of its peoples. Absolutely. And secondly, a given people can disintegrate, right? Yep. Politically, and later integrate even more effectively. The Yoruba states of Ibadan, Obiokuta, Ajeye had populations of up to 100,000 citizens, as large as I believe that's supposed to be much, of the city-states, principalities, and palatinates of feudal Germany. This is a comparison which is worth bringing to light, and it is one that struck European observers who happened to visit Yoruba land in the middle years of the 19th century. And I think we just caught Comrade Alex #read that back, where he says, Germany why I can't read today, y'all? Germany has long had a common culture and language, and there was a form of political unity under the Holy Roman Empire from the 12th to the 15th century. However, after the Reformation and the breakup of the Holy Roman Empire, the German people were divided into as many separate political entities as there are days in the year, some of them being hardly bigger than a public park. Yet the internal class relations and productive forces continued to develop throughout Germany, and ultimately, by 1870, unity again was again achieved, and feudalism giving way to the powerful capitalist nation state.
Which we know what their common interest was, which was gaining captives to develop their, so that's important to look at. And then from the African standpoint, where there was this unity, that was more like, we're going to compete amongst each other to get what we need so that we can get these resources from Europe. And that means that we're going to fight against each other and then export our captives out in return for these things.
Yes. So, all right. You have anything else on your Yoruba land that you wanted to speak to?
I did like that last paragraph. You read, Alex says, read that back. At the end, where he's talking about some of the other societies within the Oyo, he said the Asante's connection with the export of slaves in the 18th century led its rulers to concentrate on expansionism of the type which would bring in captives through wars, raise tribute, and as articles of trade from regions where they had been made prisoner. Since the 15th century, Akan country was building up rather than exporting its human resources. Captives were incorporated locally into society, and on the eve of colonialism, a substantial portion of Asante society was made up of Adanko Ba, the descendants of one-time captives who were the laboring population on the land. Development had not come through exporting and losing labor. So this particular tribe or this particular group of people, they saw that it was not in their interest to export because they needed the people and the numbers to develop the land. And I appreciated that I mean, there was a consciousness in some of these societies that it really isn't in our benefit to lose and to stagnate our population by exporting the captives, and they did with it. They fought against that. So
Black power. All right, so the next African society that Brother Walter Rodney discusses is the hominy. I don't know why I'm saying the hominy. The homie, yeah, the homie. Chilling with.
Do you like hominy? Do you like hominy? Do you eat?
That's
hominy?
yeah.
Maybe that's what you think of? I don't like hominy.
It's like that's kind of like a porridge or like something comparable to like grits or something like that, right?
Something like that, but it's got a funny taste.
Yeah, no, thank you. But so he starts off straight out the gate just by saying the homie was deeply, deeply involved in the slave trade, and I don't say involved voluntarily, but forced to participate in the slave trade. And he makes the comment that between the 18th and 19th century, the homie had a very stagnant population, and the only stimulus that they had to their economy was slave exports, like meaning they weren't able to trade anything else but
captives.
Yeah,
that was it. And
they became a raiding state, meaning in West Africa, and we already understand like in West Africa is where a lot of African people were transported from into the slave trade. Right. But they became a raiding state, and this was after failing to get Europeans to accept anything else other than human beings.
Yeah, because comparable to like Oyo, they had a very rich culture, and it even mentioned like their rituals and their religious like ceremonies that they would have, and how people from Europe would come there and enjoy that. They would enjoy the resources of cloth, which was another big thing that they had in their favor, whereas this society, it wasn't that. And even the kings within this, like it says, the kings of Alada and Wida, which had made the mistake of either failing to protect their own citizens from enslavement or actually conniving, like actually plotting to send captives for their financial benefit. So.
And just really quickly, like I was having a discussion, and the discussion was based around it was based around the shooting that happened in Lenox Mall yesterday. And if you've heard about Lenox Mall is a very popular mall here in Atlanta. And so I believe the brother involved in the shooting, in the robbery, was black. And just the point that I was trying to make in this discussion is that first, just acknowledging that, African people, colonized people, are not born with this inherent sense to want to commit violence, to want to commit robbery, to do anything, to participate in the illegal drug economy, which in turn, pretty much poisons our own people. But I say that just to acknowledge that black and colonized people have been born into a society where these conditions have been forced upon us, to where we have to commit these so-called unsavory acts, in order to survive. Why do you rob somebody? It's because you have no access to resources. You're trying to meet a need. Unconsciously or consciously, you are struggling to meet a need. And just based on the fact that we understand, I'm not even really a person into statistics, into numbers, because you can ride through any Black or colonized community, any place in America, and you can see the rampant poverty and homelessness in our societies, in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
And it is these conditions that are forced upon us that makes us act in these so-called unsavory ways, because again, we are trying to meet a need. And I'm saying this because this can be directly compared to these African societies, in the past, who were forced to sell their own people into slavery because even with them not being able to fully understand that selling their brothers and sisters into slavery, selling our brothers and sisters into slavery was I guess bad, for lack of a better term. It was done with the understanding that we had to do this to ensure that the majority of the society of the community was able to survive, able to sustain itself.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't, just having this discussion and these understandings, you can't look at it without placing that into context. And it's not possible for you to do so, because if you do, then you aren't acknowledging what colonialism and imperialism has done in order to make these conditions so that we have to commit these so-called crimes in order to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Why do Black and colonized people go out to rob people? Because there is no economic development within our communities. There is no type of what do you mean? How do you say recycling, circulation
of our own funds into our community.
And then so you're faced with not having economic development in your community. Okay, well then say somebody was to come to argue that, well, you need to get your broke ass up and go get a job. How can the average Black or colonized person be able to support him or herself? And that's not even including the fact that these colonized people, have children. But how are we supposed to sustain ourselves if the resources that we make from these colonial jobs don't even meet our needs? And that's not an opinion. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not just saying this. This is backed up from research that was conducted that says that minimum wage in any city in the United States does not even cover your rent, your basic needs, like your income. And this is backed up through research. Does not cover, the minimum wage does not even cover the cost of your rent. Mm-hmm. So if it doesn't cover the cost of your rent doesn't include if you have any diseases or illnesses. It doesn't cover the fact that utilities, your lights, water. It doesn't cover, if you have the transportation.
Mm-hmm. Childcare.
Childcare. So, when you put all of this stuff into context, no matter how you may feel subjectively, but this is the objective reality that we as Black and colonized people face every single day. So when this does not come from the people committing robberies and Black people and colonized people committing robberies and crimes does not come from it's not an internal decision that is made on part of this individual. And it even goes to how when Comrade Huey P. Newton breaks down in Revolutionary Suicide, mm-hmm. that the individual who commits suicide doesn't commit suicide because what they're going through internally. They're committing suicide based upon the external facts that are forced upon this individual, making them believe that the best option that they have is to kill themselves. is to end their lives.
To escape the environment that they were forced to live in.
That you are forced to live in. Imperialism, capitalism, colonialism creates the conditions that African and colonized people, like, y'all, like...
it's all connected. And I mean, it comes all from this. Like, we've never stopped being colonized. So even after, generations and generations of us coming from this, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for the things that preceded with that. In our conditions, we're still forced, even with a few more comforts, we're still forced to live a harsh reality compared to, the colonizers.
And real quick before we move on, like when you're having these conversations with your friends and your family, and their response is just pretty much, they don't even want to, they don't even want to entertain, this pretty much what you're saying. It's important for us as organizers, as revolutionaries, to understand that they are only replying with the narrative that has been forced upon them. And, I guess that just continues in our responsibility as, conscious, as the conscious thinking representatives of, colonizing African people, that we work with our friends and family through patient persuasion, as it's been said. Yeah. And that, ultimately the only way that we are able to reach our people is to have these types of discussion and to reach them consciously. Because it's not going to work if you are just bombarding them. Well, I know this, I know that. It has to be done, again, through patient persuasion. But what can expedite that patient persuasion is being able to tie what you're speaking to the concrete and material, the historical facts that we can show them. That we can show them. So, yeah. Okay, but getting back to the hominy real quick. So, with the understanding that the home, I don't know why I keep saying the homie being this rating state, it has to be understood, like Comrade Walter Rodney makes the understanding that they had a very tight and tightly organized military state. So, with the understanding that the homie is a slave state, in order to go out to procure slaves, you have to have a real military force. And unfortunately, this dynamic and tightly organized military force was used to procure more African people to sell into slavery. So in so many words, he says that it's compared to Sparta, which was like this, which is, as well known, because any aspect of so-called European history is going to be forced upon colonized people to say, hey, niggas, this is the example.
This is how we got what we got. This is how you can get what you can get.
Yeah. So, they were called Black Sparta of that time, being that they encouraged young boys to become apprentices of war. And it's unfortunate that all of this, all of this organizing had to be pushed towards, selling your brothers and sisters into slavery. But another aspect of it is the utilization of women, within the military in the homie. And it says that wives within the royal palace, they started off as ceremonial guards. So, you know, like, these sisters were able to defend themselves and all of that shit. Like, you didn't play with them. And it says that from the ceremonial guards, you progress to become a part of the military based on equality of hardship and reward. So, I mean, that's just saying, like, these women within the Dahomey society they were treated as equals. Mm-hmm. So we're not talking about no warm man. You know, behind every strong black man, there's a strong black woman. Like, these women were upright, standing citizens within this African society. So much so that he makes it a point to lay out where he says, hold on, let me find where he says it. Okay, so he says, apparently the wives in the royal palace started off as a ceremonial guard in the 18th century, then progressed to become a more integral part of the Dahomey's lightning machine on terms of complete equality of hardship and reward. The Dahomey's population in the 19th century was probably no more than 200,000, and the state consistently managed to send 12 to 15,000 actives on its annual campaigns. Of those, it was estimated in 1845 that some 5,000 were women, the so-called Amazons of Dahomey, who were feared for their ferocity in battle.
Fierce black women.
Fierce black women. And you know what? Even though we understand Wakanda ain't nothing but some made up bullshit, but it made me think about, you know, those
the soldiers in there. Yeah, that was defending the empire.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to what we were just talking about, like, as far as like the Dahomeys, like their emphasis on their being just kind of like a society that's really based around having a military structure. Mm-hmm. The fact that everyone in their society was utilized in that capacity. Mm-hmm. You know, you're basically teaching your children from birth, like, you know, you read about Sparta. They teaching their kids from birth how to fight, mm-hmm. how to become soldiers, how to defend, and things of that sort. And so it was basically ingrained in their everything that they did, their society, how they acquired their resources for their land, how they worked their land, how they defended their land. It was literally ingrained in everything that they did. Despite it being tied up in the trade, in the slave trade, mm-hmm. I mean, everything that they did was just based on, you know, militarization.
I think Comrade Cameron was just saying in the comments that he named the Black Amazons or something like that he was reading about them.
It says,
he gave the name.
He said, my friend Frank from UPS read Black Sparta and told me how the Dahomey warriors would punk them, would punk men.
It's like a little right there what he says.
I got the book about the Black Amazons.
Okay. Dora
Malaji.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but you're right though. But you don't. Of course, you're not going to see things like this in mainstream imperialism media, you know. But you know, again, Walter Rodney wanted to lay out that there were societies that had been going even before their interaction with European colonialism, and that they were able to form their own militaries, their own government, state, and things in development. And then even despite when it started to happen and when, you know, they were still able to basically develop, they were underdeveloped, and they had slowed down, and it changed the course of how they were developing and what direction they were developing, but they were able to do that. And I want to also say that this particular society, perhaps, I don't know for sure, but because, again, every bit of ammunition that they were getting was from Europeans. And so that does kind of underline how tied into, you know, they were able to get these weapons and how tied in that they were to exporting.
Oh, okay. He says that the Dora Milaje is the Black Panther's bodyguards.
Okay.
Oh, in the comic book. Okay. Anthony Fernandez, we are reading How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. That's the book that we're currently on. And since you're just coming on, you can definitely look at the previous episodes up until this point. The PDF and the PDF link to the book is linked into the description as well too. All right, comrades. So we're going to go ahead and lay out our next reading portion for this chapter. And so we're going to read from the, after Dahomey, you go into the Eastern Interlacustrine States. And we're going to read from the subtitle, The Eastern Interlacustrine States up into the Coming of Imperialism and Colonialism. All and right. I feel, I'm ready to get into that. Okay, so for me, that's pages 143 up until 160.
Okay, and for this version, it is page 122 to page 135.
Okay, so again, y'all, that's the Eastern Interlacustrine States up until the coming of imperialism and colonialism. All right, comrades. #Trappers. Thank you for joining us for another revolutionary book trap with your boy, Chiefs Dia.
I'm gonna have to do some sort of thing like that. But
yeah, I got the shoulders. I got the shoulders. Maybe you can do the big hand bounce.
Maybe I can do like a high kick or something.
And let us, y'all, like we keep switching up our sets. Like y'all don't sleep on us, okay? Next time we might be on the roof somewhere. You know, like we doing the dang thing. All right, comrades. Black power, y'all.
Black power.